Well, apparently the revolution will not be televised after all. As those of you who have an internet connection, or I guess a radio signal at this point, probably know, Southwest Airlines is been canceling thousands of flights over the weekend and continues to do so with no end in sight. And apparently, this is the result of a mass sick-out staged by Southwest employees. Employees who have not gotten who have not taken their medicine, let's put it that way. And perhaps even some employees who have taken their medicine who protest Southwest's policy of imposing this medical treatment on all of their employees. Now, interestingly enough, the reason why I say unless you have a radio signal, while the TV news seems to have completely blacked out this idea that the employees striking are the reason why only Southwest Airlines appears to be completely diminished in their capacity. I was listening to at least my local news radio station, which tends to, the top and the bottom of the hour news tends to be normal mainstream media stuff. But for whatever reason on this issue, they were mentioning this possibility, which seems to be the most likely possibility, that the problems that Southwest are experiencing right now are directly related to the vaccine mandate. But TV news has not been at all. TV news just took as gospel Southwest's own propaganda response, blaming the weather for their cancellations. Although that was their initial response, later in the day, they have had to acknowledge that staff shortages are at least one contributing factor to these cancellations. And so, while I can't say 100% that is what's, that that's the story here, it certainly appears to be the story here. For what it's worth, the union for just the pilots union, not the stewardesses or anybody else, baggage handlers. Although I guess baggage handlers work for the airport, not the airline. But anyway, back to the pilots union. They are saying, "Oh no, we would never stage a sick out." No. And the reason why they have to say that is because it's against their contract to have a strike. So the union is never, even if this really was a strike, the union's not going to admit that this is a strike because the union is not allowed to organize strikes. And they may very well have not organized a strike. This could have been the pilots and other Southwest workers acting, independent of one another, or somewhat colluding to stage this event. We saw something similar after the shooting of, I can't remember the guy's name now, but it was shortly after the George Floyd incident last year. There was a guy at a Wendy's who was shot and killed by police in Atlanta, and the Atlanta police officers were raked over the coals, even though, if I remember the details correctly, it was pretty cut and dry. They didn't really have much choice other than to shoot the guy. But after that, Atlanta police were a little upset with the city government, and so they staged what was called a blue flu, where you had a bunch of Atlanta police officers call in sick and say, "Oh no, I'm sick. I can't come into work today." And so you had a lot less cops for a couple of days. And that, to me, Occam's razor would suggest that is, the most likely case in this instance. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, I'm sorry if that sounded awkward, but I didn't want to come right out and say this is exactly what happened for a fact, because I don't know that for a fact. Now that I've gotten, what facts we do know out of the way, I can kind of move into my, my speculation here, which to me is that, and you don't have to be a genius to figure this out, things are not going to end here. This is one instance, one industry, one profession in one company responding to the vaccine mandates, which are imminent. They haven't actually gone into effect on a national scale, the OSHA vaccine mandate. There are individual companies that have imposed their vaccine mandates here and there, like Tyson Foods, but the mass vaccine mandate that was announced by Joe Biden has not gone into effect yet. So we're only seeing, little minor eruptions here and there of workers being displaced and of supply chains being disrupted by these policies. As we know, 70,000 people were laid off in the state of New York over the governor's vaccine mandate there. That created a lot of disruptions in their healthcare industry, as we know, that she had to call in the National Guard to try and fill vacancies. But rolling this out on a national scale across all industries, all businesses, with 100 employees or more, is going to create such a shockwave across all industries that I don't know necessarily how. I don't know how bad things can get. But today is just a preview. It's almost like an example of the sorts of things that can happen when you displace a bunch of workers, when all of a sudden the labor force loses a certain percentage. When there's a bunch of pilots who don't show up for work, what is the result? Well, you get less flights. What is the result when you have a certain percentage of all workers, who just all of a sudden one day can't come to work anymore and don't show up? The result is a shortage of almost everything. And even things that aren't, that don't directly encounter shortages as a result of losing employees, they might be a substitute for some product that will, and so people very quickly will overwhelm them. It's a cascading effect. The economy is a dynamic beast. You can't, even if the vaccine mandates, let's say, only affected 1/4 of all occupations, and let's say the production of 25% of all goods in the economy were directly disrupted as a result of laborers and workers being removed from productive work as a result of the vaccine mandate. The damage would not be confined to that 25% of goods in the economy that are directly affected. There are a bunch of other goods that will be indirectly affected. Because let's say that the mandate disrupted the production of hot dog buns. And so all of a sudden you can't get as many hot dog buns. And you've got all these people scrambling who otherwise would have liked to buy hot dogs trying to buy something else. And so what's the next thing they go for? Well, they go for hamburgers. And so they start buying up a bunch of hamburger buns. Well, then the result is an unusually high demand for hamburger buns because they're being used as a substitute for hot dog buns. People would like to get hot dog buns to eat hot dogs if they could, but they can't, so they're eating hamburgers instead. Well, then all of a sudden that gets overwhelmed, and you have shortages of hamburger buns. And so it's not just the direct things like, oh, I couldn't get on my flight because the pilot didn't show up because of the vaccine mandate. It could manifest in, oh, well, I can't take a flight, so I guess I'm going to take a bus, and then everybody sells out of the Greyhound tickets, and then the bus, you can't get a bus ticket because everyone who was trying to take a plane can't get on a plane, decides to take a bus, and this is all set to happen across the economy in very short order. Now, yes, there is the exception of testing. But that's something that's going to be very expensive for people, and a lot of businesses likely, rather than pay for the tests for their employees, they're going to say to their employees, just get the shot. I don't want to deal with having to test you every week. And so even though the OSHA rule will say, sure, you can just test your employees if you want, you don't have to mandate the vaccine, in effect, businesses are, in many cases, are just going to mandate the vaccine anyway. This is a way of pushing the businesses into it because they're making it so onerous and difficult for the business not to mandate the vaccine. That's why Robert Barnes describes this mandate as a testing mandate with a vaccine exemption, because that's what it is, really. It's a testing mandate, which is very annoying and cost not cost prohibitive, but cost intensive, money intensive. And then you have these rapid tests, which are hard to find as it is, and when you do find them, they're expensive. And if you have over 100 employees trying to buy over 100 of them for however many hundreds of employees you have every week, is going to get real old real fast. And so that's where the vaccine exception to the testing mandate comes in. You say to all your employees, well, if you just get vaccinated, I don't have to buy these tests. So I'm just going to tell everybody you need to get vaccinated because I don't want to test you every week. And even if a employer, doesn't want to do that, and they say, you know what, no, I'm going to try my hardest, I'm going to try and test everybody who's not vaccinated. Some weeks, because of the overwhelming demand for these rapid tests, which are scarce, they might not be able to get enough tests. And so even if they would like to test somebody and let them come into work, they won't be allowed to let them come into work. And so those people will be sitting on the sidelines at home, not producing anything in the economy. And so the ability of the economy to produce these rapid tests, which already is quite strained. They're not able to produce enough tests as it is that the people would like to buy. There's already kind of a shortage of them. That is going to be a huge bottleneck when all of a sudden everyone who works somewhere with more than 100 employees is going to have to be taking one of those tests on a weekly basis. So needless to say, this is not going to end well, I don't think. Now, something else I want to disclose, I don't give, no, I'm not going to say anything financial. But let's just say, as of right now, I own zero risk assets. That's just me personally. I'm in pretty much all cash at the moment, which I'm not comfortable with either. Because cash is, is a hot potato. I was trying to move my money around into some different things anyway. They were a little less volatile, which that's all I'm looking for, is stability. But now I'm just in cash for liquidity's sake, because who knows, maybe I'll find somewhere to put the money. I'm not a high net worth individual anyway, so it's not like it really matters. But I feel kind of compelled to say that because I want to be kind of open about any conflicts of interest I have. I don't, it's not like I own stocks or something, so I'm not rooting for the stock market to do well. I'm not rooting for it to go down either necessarily. Well, although I think it should, because it's incredibly overinflated. But I've talked about the bubble to death. I don't necessarily think that even something like this is going to prick the bubble, because the bubble clearly has no bearing on reality. Honestly, I don't even think that the Fed is the number one, has a total control over asset prices. I don't know at this point what is affecting asset prices. It's not it's certainly not the U.S. economy, though. The health of the economy has no bearing on risk assets. But, I don't think it would be crazy at this point. The real estate market certainly seems to be softening quite a bit across the country. Of course, it always depends on your local market, but generally across the country, including where I am, things are softening a bit. And there has been certainly a softening on Wall Street, where it's a much more tenuous situation. I haven't done really a Wall Street update in a long time. Maybe I should dedicate a day to that this week. But, my timing earlier, about in spring or to early summer, when was it I was saying? I was thinking that September was going to be when we would start to see a shift. I really need to go back and listen to some of my past predictions, because things are starting to turn now in the fall. Maybe I was a couple months off, but never kind of predict things by, months. And who knows, maybe things are not starting to soften for the reasons that I said they would back then, which is what I really need to focus on if I go back and listen to that. But, I watch a lot of different spheres that ordinarily are not economically, they don't get talked about in the same breadth. This vaccine mandate issue, stocks and bonds, real estate. These are normally when the media talks about them, they address them as sort of independent bodies that do their own thing. When in reality, all risk assets are interconnected, and while they have been independent of the real economy for quite some time, if the real economy gets bad enough, the asset market has a tendency to revert to its mean, as all markets must do in the long run. I mean, it's hard to remember back this far, but in 2020, in the spring of 2020, it was a bad time to own assets. There was a huge sell-off for good reason, and after that, we pumped the bubble bigger than ever. I thought real estate and stocks were way overvalued in January of 2020. Where they are now, they're nowhere near that. We've gone over the moon, not to the moon, way over the moon. We've passed the moon, and we've just about hit Venus. And so for those of you who do own risk assets, beware, because the mandate's taking effect, and the distortions and the disruptions that will cause in the real economy may very well be, it has the potential to be the pin that this bubble has been in search of for so long. And it's not a guarantee, but this is a major risk that people need to watch. We'll know within a month of the mandate taking effect. I just looked up, and I saw that the federal employee mandate is November 22nd. I'll have to look more to see if it's the same for the OSHA mandate. Probably is different, but still, it will be sometime before Christmas, it looks like. And so it looks like these holidays are going to be a little rougher than they were last year. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.